Norfolk and Suffolk were patrolling the Denmark Straits on 23rd of May. At about 7:30 in the evening, a most inconvenient time, just as I was going to have my dinner, the Suffolk reported sighting an enemy battlecruiser and cruiser, to sea more than 6 to 7 miles. About 3/4 of an hour later, the Norfolk, who was steering so as to make contact with the Suffolk, sighted the enemy at about 6 miles away at an uncomfortably close range. The Norfolk turned away under fire, making smoke, and got out of sight. From that time onwards, the whole party was steering to the southwest at from 28 to 29 knots. The Suffolk keeping the enemy in sight from astern as far as possible, the Norfolk working up on the port side of the enemy, but keeping out of sight. All this time, the visibility was low, and there was always a danger of running into the enemy at a close range, if he should alter course towards us without being seen. This went on all night, and in these latitudes, it was light all night. Soon after 5 on the morning of the 24th, smoke was seen fine on the port bow of the Norfolk. This we knew must be the Hood and Prince of Wales, whom we were expecting to intercept the enemy before long, although we did not know exactly at what time they would do so. Soon afterwards, the Norfolk sighted the enemy herself for the first time since making contact the evening before. And at the same time, the Hood and Prince of Wales became clearly visible, closing in on the enemy. The enemy cruiser was ahead of the enemy battleship. Very soon, the Hood opened fire, followed by the Bismarck, Prince of Wales, and then the cruiser. In a very short time, the Hood was hit, fire broke out, and 2 minutes later she blew up. The Prince of Wales continued the action, but before long was forced to turn away under the cover of smoke. The Norfolk and Suffolk continued to keep in touch with the enemy at a range of about 15 miles, and the Prince of Wales kept contact with the Norfolk while she repaired some damage she had received. For some hours after this, the enemy continued steaming about 28 knots. He then reduced to about 24 knots, and finally altered his course to south. I think that at this time he felt that he had outdistanced us, as we were behind him, and he had sufficient speed to be able to keep ahead of us and out of range. So it was no longer necessary for him to steam so fast, and he obviously would not want to use up too much fuel. The Suffolk closed over towards the Norfolk, and while doing so, she came under fire from the enemy and had to turn away. At the same time, the Prince of Wales and the Norfolk moved in to support her and opened fire on the Bismarck. The Bismarck may well have been hit at this time, but the range was very long. At any rate, she turned away and broke off the action. So things went on, with the enemy steering south at about 24 or 22 knots, until nearly midnight, when the torpedo bombers from the Victorious came over the Norfolk and were directed to where the Bismarck was. The attack on the Bismarck took place just outside visibility distance, but we had a report from the aircraft afterwards that they had scored 1 hit. Soon after this attack, what is thought to have been a merchant ship was sighted very close to where the Bismarck was. This caused considerable anxiety and confusion, as she very nearly got fired at. As a result of the torpedo attack, I think the Bismarck must have turned away, because we lost touch with her at this time. We did not find her again until about 2:15, just when it was getting dark. For now, we'd been steaming south for the whole day and had reached a latitude where it was quite dark from about 2 to 5 in the morning. When we sighted her, she was about 8 miles away, and fire was opened for a short time. Again, I think she turned away, and for the moment we lost her. During the dark, we continued to shadow her and keep touch, but unfortunately, by making a large alteration of course, she managed to give us the slip about 3 o'clock in the morning. A search was immediately started by all the ships in the area, and dispositions made by the Admiralty to cover her possible courses. As a result of this, she was sighted by an aircraft of the Coastal Command at about 10:30 on the morning of the 26th, making for Brest. And from the position she was found in, she must have been making good a speed of about 22 knots. Almost immediately afterwards, she was sighted by aircraft of the Fleet Air Arm from Ark Royal, who kept in touch with her and shadowed her until dark. When she was sighted by the aircraft, the Norfolk was about 200 miles away, steaming at her best speed to overtake her. And various forces were converging to intercept her or overtake her. It soon became obvious, however, that unless her speed was reduced, we could not make contact with her until the following morning of the 27th. when she would be uncomfortably close to the French coast and under the protection of her own aircraft. However, luckily, the torpedo bombers from HMS Ark Royal, who attacked her that evening, succeeded in crippling her so badly she could not steer except up into the wind, and that took her away from Brest and towards our own forces. Despite having been hit already by a number of torpedoes, she was able to reply with her whole armament. Norfolk kept ahead of the Bismarck, and as soon as the battleships were engaged, moved in towards her and engaged her as well. It was not very long before the Bismarck was silenced, except for one turret and a few of her secondary armament, which she continued to fire for some time longer. Eventually, when she was no longer able to resist, the ships closed in at short range, and Norfolk hit her with the torpedo, and soon afterwards the Dorsetshire also closed in on her, torpedoed her, and she sank. She had stood an enormous amount of punishment. At the end was still afloat, and apparently floating quite high, in spite of having been hit by a number of torpedoes. No doubt she was a strongly built and well-protected ship, and I think that her tonnage must have been far and above the 35,000 that she was supposed to have been.